You're watching Capital City Sunday.
President Donald Trump is now suing the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago, claiming that their sanctuary city policies are blocking federal authorities from enforcing the administration's immigration laws. The federal lawsuit is the first by the president's Department of Justice against sanctuary cities and states. It is the Trump administration's latest effort as part of its mass deportation plans. 2 days after the president signed off on a slew of executive orders cracking down on immigration at the border, raids by immigration and customs enforcement officers began taking place across the country. While those, quote, routine operations have not consisted of large-scale raids, it has been reported that ICE has conducted nearly 1,000 arrests on some days compared to the 312 daily average under the Biden administration. This week, ICE releasing some of those migrant detainees as space within the agency's detention facilities has reached 108% capacity. In January, the Trump administration sent 1,500 additional troops to the southern border, a 60% increase in active duty ground forces since the president was sworn into office. Joining me on the show today is UW-Madison professor and U.S. refugee and asylum law expert Sarah McKinnon. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
More than 8,000 migrants have been arrested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement since Trump's inauguration. How does that compare to the efforts under the Biden administration?
It is a different policy. So the Biden administration and Trump administration both used detention and deportation. The Biden administration was less likely to use raids by the ICE officers. So this was something that was scaled back under the Biden administrations, although there certainly were moments of individuals having interaction with law enforcement, which then meant that they would likely be in detention and potentially in deportation proceedings. And so what I would say about the changes is that activity of ICE administration, ICE officials in the interior of the United States has ramped up, has scaled up again. And I think we'll continue to see that throughout the country.
Trump has confirmed plans to send as many as 30,000 migrants to the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo Bay, and it has been reported that deported migrants have already began showing up there. Can you explain these migrant holding operations and the process in which they are being detained in the region?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think it's important to understand that there is a history of detaining migrants outside of the United States. So this is really not a new effort, although it certainly seems new, and the scope and scale of it seems new in this instance. This procedure can really be tracked back to the Cold War and some policies that were implemented there. Guantanamo has been used in the past to detain individuals who are non-U.S. nationals, and so we're seeing that again. I think, as I said, the scale of it, 30,000 individuals detained in that facility, seems pretty astounding. And what makes that challenging is that it means that individuals really don't have access to legal representation. They don't have access to the types of services that they might need to challenge those claims. So they're effectively really isolated in their ability to challenge that detention.
Sarah, ICE is funded to operate 4,000 detention beds. It was reported Wednesday that the agency is at 108% capacity with close to 42,000 people in custody. The White House confirmed that more than 450 immigrant detainees have already been released since Wednesday. What does that say about the approach the administration is taking to carry out these arrests?
So it was pretty clear from the get-go that they would reach capacity pretty quickly. In total, if we think about the ICE beds and then the beds that are by private institutions and even our local jails, it's around 30 to 40,000 beds at any given time that are available. And so that meant as ICE scaled up the raids in communities, it was necessary to think of a place for individuals to go. And so as that met capacity, that means that they have had to release individuals. This process of releasing individuals after having interaction with ICE officials is not new. This was actually quite the process prior to the Trump administration, and so it just shows that really this policy to detain all undocumented individuals is really unfeasible unless there's an enormous expansion of facilities, which seems unlikely. It seems really unfeasible economically to make that happen at the speed at which the policy suggests that the administration would like this to happen.
I want to talk about birthright citizenship. A judge is set to decide on a case challenging Trump's executive order to end it. What are the implications of that decision?
Yeah, it's important to recognize that almost the minute that executive action was released, it was challenged by many states. I believe over 20 states challenged that. And so we've seen different federal judges speak on this matter. There's another federal judge that is set to speak on this matter really soon. And all of them have said that the executive order really goes against the Constitution, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and some Supreme Court cases that followed in the aftermath of that. If it were to be implemented, what the executive action is suggesting is that children who are born to individuals who are not U.S. citizens or who do not have U.S. permanent residency would not be U.S. citizens. But as we know, that is a centuries-old right that is available. And so many experts are suggesting that's unlikely, although we will wait and see how this executive action proceeds through the courts.
In Wisconsin, Republicans and Democrats have introduced competing measures in the state legislature last week. Republicans are proposing that local sheriffs be required to verify someone's immigration status if they are jailed on felony charges and if they are undocumented to alert ICE. Democrats propose blocking local government officials from cooperating with federal deportation efforts should there be a more bipartisan and comprehensive approach to legislative efforts on this issue.
Yeah, this is really speaking to one of the executive orders that tracks back to a history of this order called 287G. It was actually implemented under the President Biden administration. It's called Securing Our Communities. And really this speaks to the interaction between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement, ICE specifically. What this action is really getting at is whether or not local law enforcement in our local communities like Madison, Wisconsin or Milwaukee, Wisconsin are obligated to alert ICE officials if they interact with and have someone in their custody who is undocumented. As we know, some local law enforcement already do this, some don't, and so this state matter is really trying to provide some clarity on that. Already, the Trump administration has said that if local law enforcement do not communicate and interact in this way, that federal funding will be cut. And so I think that there's a lot happening right now in terms of legal activity, both at the state level and the federal level. And this will kind of remain. It remains to be seen what will happen in terms of how much local law enforcement how much right local law enforcement have to refuse interaction, to refuse communicating with ICE officials.
UW-Madison professor and U.S. refugee and asylum law expert Sarah McKinnon. Sarah, thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thank you.